Greetings once again, my friends, and welcome back to Drak Reviews. It's been a while. But today is not really, I'm probably coming off the lines of a check-in, but frankly, I don't think a whole lot is actually going to change in my final review. And what I'm saying basically is I'm not entirely finished with the game, but I'm far enough into it that I can give my review and feel confident that not really a whole lot's going to change there. So welcome to my review of Blaster Master Zero for the Nintendo Switch by Inti Creates and basically given by Sunsoft. So just to bring people up to speed, I'm actually a lover of the series, but it's a series that's kind of weird in the fact that it has existed for a long time, but a lot of people don't necessarily know that. Blaster Master was originally on the NES, and yes, it's Blaster Master. I know in the Drak tries I said Master Blaster all the time. Sorry about that. That's literally how I remember it. There was an NES game that was really fun, but eventually there were a bunch of other games that came across. Like there was a Game Boy Color game, I believe. There was a PlayStation game, and eventually there was even a WiiWare game rebooting the original game. and so while I knew the NES title, I had this strange pattern with I found out about the Game Boy title from a Screw Attack video. Past the Game Boy era, so couldn't really grab a copy unless I wanted to emulate it. I actually came across the PlayStation version in a store as a kid, but I couldn't afford it. But I was interested. I'm like, ooh, I know that series. And I didn't even find out about the WiiWare version until, again, another Screw Attack video. So, yeah. But when Blaster Master Zero got announced for the Switch, I knew immediately I wanted to pick this thing up. The trailer looked great, and I knew I wanted to be able to do a Drak Tries and a Drak Review. So I'm excited to be able to bring this to you guys. So let's just go ahead and get into the review, starting with the story. From what I can tell, and I might be wrong about this, but this is what I'm getting from my experience in the game. This is a retelling of the original game, but in with newer twists. So you actually play as, I think his name is Fred, and you come across this ancient frog, which you would like to study as a scientist, but unfortunately it gets away, and while you're chasing it, you come across an underground bunker, which has the Sophia 3, the tank that you see in the game, that you actually go to hunt down your friend the frog, and I can't remember the frog's name off the top of my head, but you basically go embark on a journey to go get him back so that you can continue your research, and so he is safe, supposedly. And through that, you go through numerous worlds and eventually even come across a new character, I believe actually called Sophia, an android that actually is very well known or well versed in the tank that you're using. So she actually becomes a really cool partner character to be able to get advice from, as well as being able to... I actually think she's got some pretty good explanations of the weapons too. So I've appreciated her dialogue and being able to have that dialogue go back and forth. But as far as the story goes, I mean, I'm not really taking any points off of it. I haven't finished it, so that's probably where I would. But simply, I actually do like how simplistic it is. Going chasing a frog, 80% of this game is roughly exploration and its gameplay, and I'm okay with that. The interactions between Fred as well as Sophie, I think is her name, Sophie or Sophia, are really good. Being able to have that interaction, that experience, actually helps with the story when you get interested in it. But story isn't, again, I want to re-emphasize, for the Blaster Master games, as well as many, many others, story isn't necessarily the emphasis. It's the gameplay, it's the experience. And so at that point, I do think the story is pretty solid for what it is, but it's not, like, if you're coming in expecting a deep story, you're not going to get one. So keep that in mind. Moving on to visuals. This game is pretty. It's very much I'm probably going to get this wrong, but it feels very much like a 32-bit take on the original 8-bit classic. And I love it. I love it's bright, it's colorful, it gets dark when it needs to, but most of the time it's pretty bright and colorful in a lot of the areas that I've gone into, which is actually, in my opinion, compared to the NES game, a contrast. Where that game, it went bright here and there. Most of the time it stayed dark. It stayed with the darker colors, and it worked. This one, it went brighter, and it worked even better. So I've actually really liked the visuals. It's very much a homage to the 8-bit game, as well as something brand new for people to enjoy. Because just because you're actually going to go into areas that look familiar from the 8-bit game, we're actually coming across some new areas that are just as interesting. And so I do like that, the fact that they added to it, but also kind of brought back the formula we already knew. So while the visuals are awesome, again, it is a nostalgia run, so that is something for people to keep in mind. Now we actually get to go to where the game shines the most, which is the gameplay. I don't know necessarily how to explain Blaster Master Zero to you aside from Metroid-vania. But here's the thing. I actually would say it's not Metroid-vania, it's Blaster Master. There were actually games that did the Metroid-vania-esque formula before Castlevania Symphony of the Night, before Super Metroid, actually kind of capitalized on them. And Blaster Master was one of them. And so while I do think that this adheres more to the Metroidvania style, there's more items to collect, there's bigger maps to explore, I just can't help but go down the lines of it's Blaster Master. This is how Blaster Master worked originally, with more levels. So it's kind of hard for me to describe it other than just to make things simple for you guys. It is a Metroidvania game. So you are expecting a lot of exploration, a lot of backtracking, especially if you want to complete the maps and get all the items. You're going to be doing a lot of that, as well as a lot of boss fights, both inside the tank as well as outside the tank. That's the other cool part about Blaster Master that makes it unique, is that you do have this tank overworld, but occasionally you'll come across these little levels that you have to run as a person. And the gameplay for both is spot on. The way it should feel from the 8-bit classic. The only complaint that I do have, and I did take points off for in gameplay, was it is very twitchy. Which is weird because I always remember, and I even looked up an emulated version of Blaster Master just to refresh my memory. Where this is twitchy, the original was very stiff. At least in my recollection. Like, the tank feels stiffer in the NES game to me. And also the human segments feel stiffer. And this one feels way too twitchy, so we haven't found that balance yet, and it's a little frustrating. And as people remember from the Drak tries that I did, I was also very frustrated that when the game launched, it actually didn't have Nintendo Switch Pro controller support. I actually had to play it on the dock controller with the 2 Joy-Cons. And I'm not saying it was bad, but I wasn't really liking the gameplay style. Thankfully, when Pro Controller support got added, I immediately jumped on it, but didn't really fix anything. So this is obviously a gameplay thing, and it's meant to be as twitchy as it is, and that's really my only gripe, is I think it's way too twitchy. I think you can easily get yourself into situations that are harder to get out of than they need to be. Same thing with the original with its stiffness. So that's really my only complaint with it. I think it's very solid in the Metroidvania kind of catalog of games, as well as being a Blaster Master game, but it is too twitchy, so in a lot of cases, things are going to feel like, I don't know how to explain it other than your reaction time is going to feel a little weird in this game because of the twitchiness. It's so easy to then move, but then you could easily get yourself caught into other problems. Audio-wise, there really isn't much to talk about with voice cast. 80% of it is the music, and I love it. It's a nostalgia trip through and through, as well as some new tracks that are as intriguing. I've actually been trying to track down the soundtrack. I really want it for like my iPod to go jogging with or something like that, because it's got a lot of really good motivating music. So I really don't have too much of a problem with it. Some of the sound effects I think might need a little bit of work, but that's just kind of more of a nitpicky thing. I really didn't take a whole lot of points off of the audio. And then finally going into the replay value in the presentation. So being that it's a Metroidvania game, if you've played Rogue Legacy, if you've played Binding of Isaac, which to me kind of plays like those, Rogue Legacy, Castlevania Symphony of the Night, obviously, the Strider that came out in 2014, all of these games play very similar, and they do kind of have the same replay value because of that. Filling out the map, getting out the additional health upgrades, missile upgrades, all of that stuff, as well as completing the story. So the replay value is there, but I can't really say that there's more to it than what a classic Metroidvania title would give you. So I'm not saying that's a bad thing, because for Metroidvania fans like me, that's perfect. But for those who are brand new to the series, that might not be necessarily enough. And now we finally get to the presentation, which is where I think this is also going to have a little bit of an issue. Presentation-wise, does it come together to form a good game? I believe it does. Okay, because Blaster Master Zero is a nostalgic thrill ride from start to end, or at least start from where I'm at before ending. But for somebody who, like, I think for nostalgic gamers and for Metroid-vania fans, this is not a hard sell. This is going to be a fun experience for you. For a modern gamer who probably expects more, like, say, Overwatch-esque graphics or, you know, like 3D graphics, things like that, this is going to be a tougher sell, especially since the story to them is going to seem kind of corny, and the gameplay is going to seem a bit weird unless you've actually played a Metroid-vania game. So that's where the presentation kind of falters a little bit. I see for like gamers, like hardcore gamers, fans of nostalgic gaming, and indie game fans, you'll love it. But to modern gamers, I think it's just going to be a tougher sell for you to shill out the money on your Nintendo Switch for it. Assuming you even have a Switch. And so with all of that being said, I have no problem giving this a solid 8.5 out of 10. It does have some issues here and there, but easily fixable issues. I would really love to see a sequel coming from the same developers, and I hope that happens, because this is a franchise that I think actually still has some wind in it, and you can do additional stuff with it. But that's going to go ahead and do it for my review of Blaster Master Zero. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you guys have additional comments you guys want to bring up or complaints, feel free to leave a comment below. I'll try and respond to you as best as I can. But again, thank you guys so much for continuing to like, comment, and subscribe to my channel and all of the content that it brings. I try to accommodate to so many people just because I'm a geek of so many colors. And of course, I will see you guys next time for the next review, especially since tomorrow we start up coverage for E3 2017. We'll see you then.